The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as 17 different species argued across the massive U-shaped table. Holograms flickered, translators struggled to keep up with the cacophony of clicks, whistles, and guttural growls, and at least 3 diplomatic incidents had already occurred in the first 15 minutes. "We are on the brink of the 4th pan-galactic war in a century," announced High Counselor Nezbak, his 12 eyes blinking in sequence to indicate extreme distress. "Our traditional peacekeeping methods have failed." Admiral Gorton of the Human Alliance shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Humans had only joined the galactic community 70 years ago, and they were still considered the naive newcomers. Perhaps military intervention. "No," shouted 17 voices in perfect unison. Counselor Plex, a gelatinous being who communicated through color changes, pulsed an irritated orange. "The last military intervention resulted in the destruction of the Centauri hub and 3 habitable moons. What we need," said Nezbak, "is to implement the Universal Education Initiative." Silence fell across the chamber. Several delegates nervously adjusted their breathing apparatus. "You can't be serious," whispered Admiral Gorton. "That's just a theory. There's no proof that. For centuries we've observed that the only humans capable of maintaining order among unpredictable, emotional, irrational beings with limited impulse control are your kindergarten teachers," said Nezbak. "We've studied their techniques, their patience, their inexplicable ability to manage chaos with nothing but a firm voice and colorful stickers." Which is how, exactly 27 hours later, Ellie Thornberry found herself staring out the viewport of a faster-than-light shuttle, heading toward Nebula Station. "Let me get this straight," she said to the military escort sitting across from her. "You want me, a kindergarten teacher from Duluth, to mediate peace talks between alien species who have been at war for centuries?" Lieutenant Kim nodded. "The Council believes your skill set is uniquely qualified for this situation." Ellie laughed. "Because I can handle 35-year-olds during a sugar crash after the Valentine's Day party? Because you understand the fundamental nature of conflict resolution among beings who possess immense destructive capability but limited emotional regulation." Lieutenant Kim handed her a tablet. "According to our research, the behavioral patterns of the delegate species bear a striking resemblance to human children between ages 4 and 6. Ellie scrolled through the information. The Zaxxons refused to communicate with anyone who used the color blue. The Trill Hive collapsed into violent outbursts if their afternoon nap cycle was disrupted. The Vrex delegation had to be kept separate from the Krill because of an incident involving stolen snacks 3 centuries ago. "This is ridiculous," Ellie muttered. "Your contract includes hazard pay, a pension that will set up your great-grandchildren for life, and unlimited supply requisitions," said Lieutenant Kim. "Plus humanity gets a seat on the Galactic Economic Committee if you succeed." Ellie sighed as the massive space station came into view. It resembled a giant metallic snowflake, with ships of all sizes docked along its crystalline arms. "Fine," she said, "but I'm going to need glitter. Lots and lots of glitter." "This is Diplomat Vex Tor, your protocol officer," Lieutenant Kim said, introducing Ellie to a tall, reedy alien with skin like polished copper and 3 arms that never seemed to stop moving. "Most honored educator Thornberry," Vex Tor said with a bow so deep his forehead nearly touched the floor. "We have prepared your quarters according to human specifications and assembled the delegates for your initial assessment." "Please call me Ellie," she replied, extending her hand. Vex Tor stared at her outstretched palm with what appeared to be horror. "I cannot engage in the human bonding ritual of handshakes as my species communicates microbiologically through palm secretions. You would experience vivid hallucinations for approximately 47 of your Earth hours." "Good to know," Ellie said, retracting her hand. "How about we start with a tour?" As they walked through the gleaming corridors of Nebula Station, Ellie marveled at the diversity of life forms rushing past. Some floated in hoverpods, others slithered along specialized tracks in the floor, and one species appeared to teleport in short bursts, leaving behind the smell of cinnamon. and this is Admiral Kraz, commander of the station's security forces, Vextor announced as they entered the command center. Admiral Kraz resembled nothing so much as a battle-hardened octopus in a military uniform. His tentacles operated multiple consoles simultaneously as his main body hovered in a gravity suspension unit. "So you're the human solution?" Kraz's translator rendered his bubbling speech with a distinct tone of skepticism. "I've commanded peacekeeping forces in 3-star systems and contained the Proxima Rebellion with minimal casualties. What exactly do you bring to this situation?" Ellie smiled. "I once prevented a classroom uprising after the school cafeteria ran out of chocolate milk. No casualties, though there were some tears." "This isn't a joke, Educator Thornberry. The delegates arriving have access to planet-destroying technology and the emotional stability of..." "Kindergartners." "Yes, I've been briefed," Ellie interrupted. "Speaking of which, where's my classroom?" Vextor and Admiral Kraz exchanged glances. "Your classroom?" Vextor's third arm twitched nervously. "Yes. If I'm going to be teaching diplomatic relations, I need a proper environment. One large room, movable furniture, storage for supplies, and an adjoining quiet space." Admiral Kraz's tentacles froze mid-motion. "We have the grand negotiation chamber prepared with force fields, armed guards, and 17 separate exits to prevent species cross-contamination." Ellie shook her head. "That won't work. Show me your available spaces." 3 hours later, Ellie had commandeered the station's largest recreation area and was directing a very confused maintenance crew as they rearranged furniture. "The circle configuration is essential," she explained to Vextor, who was recording her instructions with increasing alarm. "No hierarchy. Everyone can see everyone else, and I can reach any troublemaker within 5 seconds. The Zaxxons and Krill have been mortal enemies for 3 generations, Vextor protested. "They cannot sit adjacent to each other." "They certainly can. Just like Tommy and Jessica from my class last year. They hated each other in September, best friends by May." A loud crash interrupted them as a repurposed battle droid entered the room carrying a large crate. "Your requisitioned supplies, Educator Thornberry," it announced in a voice too cheerful for its heavily armored frame. "Thank you." Ellie checked the designation number painted on its chassis. "Do you have a name?" "Tactical Assault Bot, T-47 Series, Unit 9. "That's a mouthful. How about I call you Tab? Teacher's Assistant Bot?" The droid's optical sensors flickered. Redesignation accepted. "Tab ready for educational deployment?" Ellie opened the crate and began unpacking colorful charts, marble jars, and what appeared to be thousands of gold star stickers. "What are those for?" Admiral Kraz had entered silently, his gravity unit humming. "Positive reinforcement," Ellie replied. "Even the most militaristic species appreciates recognition." "The delegates arrive in 1 hour, Kraz said. The Grand Negotiator was supposed to open proceedings with a formal address regarding the disputed territories in the Epsilon Quadrant. Ellie nodded as she set up a large chart with 17 different colored columns. "We'll get to that. But first, we're going to establish diplomatic norms and get to know each other." "Get to know each other?" Kraz's tentacles curled in distress. "These beings have been trying to annihilate each other for centuries." "Exactly," Ellie said, placing a stuffed earth animal, a giraffe, in the center of the circle. "And that's why whoever holds Mr. Longneck gets uninterrupted speaking time during our sharing circle." "Today we practice listening," Ellie announced to the assembled delegates, who regarded her with expressions ranging from bewilderment to outright hostility. The Zaxxon representative, a crystalline being who refracted light in hypnotic patterns, chimed melodically. "We have not traveled 17 parsecs to participate in primitive human bonding rituals." "And yet here you are," Ellie replied cheerfully, holding up Mr. Longneck. "Diplomat crystalline," Since you spoke first, you get the talking giraffe. The Zaxxon's crystalline surface clouded in confusion as Ellie placed the stuffed animal in its appendages. Now, please share one thing your species values and one thing that makes your species unique. The Zaxxon hesitated, then spoke slowly. We value harmonic resonance above all else. Our uniqueness lies in our ability to communicate through light refraction. Excellent sharing. Ellie affixed a gold star to the Zaxxon column on her chart. The crystalline being's surface shimmered with what appeared to be pleasure. That's ridiculous, rumbled the Vrex delegate, a massive reptilian with scales that shifted color with its mood, currently a dark orange of disdain. The Zaxxons are hardly unique. The Luminari of Sector 7 also communicate through light, and they don't shatter when startled. Several delegates gasped. The Zaxxon's surface darkened dangerously. Ambassador Vrex, Ellie said firmly, in this chamber we practice respectful language. That was a put-down, and put-downs earn a visit to the reflection corner. The enormous reptilian stared at her in disbelief. I am the military commander of 12-star systems. I do not sit in corners. Ellie crossed her arms. In my classroom, everyone follows the same rules. Corner. 5 minutes. Use the time to think about how your words affect others. A tense silence fell across the room. Admiral Kraz's tentacles hovered over his sidearm. The security team positioned around the perimeter shifted nervously. To everyone's shock, Ambassador Vrex slowly rose from his seat and moved to the designated corner, his scales shifting to a muted blue. 5 minutes, he growled. Ellie continued around the circle, each delegate sharing while holding Mr. Longneck. By the time they reached the final representative, a collective consciousness of microscopic organisms that spoke in perfect unison through their host body, the atmosphere had shifted noticeably. Now, Ellie said, placing a large star chart on the central table, let's talk about the disputed planet in the Epsilon Quadrant. Immediately, multiple delegates began shouting. A gelatinous being oozed threateningly toward the Trill Hive representative. 2 species activated personal force fields. Ellie calmly walked to a small device on her desk and pressed a button. A pleasant chime sounded 3 times. When you hear the chime, she said quietly, all voices stop, all appendages are still, and all eyes, optical sensors or sensory apparatuses focus on me. To Admiral Kraz's astonishment, the chaos subsided. 17 different species froze in place. Thank you, Ellie continued. Now, we're going to solve this problem together, but first we need to understand what everyone needs. Not what you want, what you need. She unrolled a large sheet of paper. Tab will record your needs on this chart. 1 at a time, please. Ambassador Zyx, you first. Over the next 3 hours, each delegation articulated what resources they required from the disputed planet. As patterns emerged, Ellie grouped their needs into categories. Look at this, she said, pointing to the completed chart. 12 of you need the same mineral compounds, but for different purposes. 4 species require access to the polar regions for climate-specific agriculture. And all of you want to preserve the indigenous plant life, which exists nowhere else in the galaxy. Sharing is not an option, insisted the Krill delegate, its antennae quivering with emotion. The Vrex will simply take everything once we establish joint access. From his spot at the diplomatic table, having long since returned from the reflection corner, Ambassador Vrex's scales flushed deep red. The Krill speak out of historical bias. We have evolved beyond our expansionist past. Interesting point, Ambassador Vrex, Ellie said, placing a gold star on his column. Growth mindset acknowledgement. As for your concern, Ambassador Krill, what if we created a resource management system with checks and balances? The delegates murmured amongst themselves. The Galactic Council has proposed 17 different treaties, said Diplomat Vextor, who had been observing from the sidelines with increasing amazement. All have failed. Those treaties were written by adults who forgot how to share, Ellie replied. She pulled out a jar filled with colorful marbles. Let's try something new. Each delegation gets 10 marbles representing your investment in this solution. You place your marbles in the project that matters most to you. As the delegations began distributing their marbles among proposed solutions, Admiral Kraz floated over to Ellie. This is remarkably effective, he admitted quietly. Though I don't understand why the Vrex delegation is suddenly being so cooperative. They've sabotaged every negotiation for the past decade. Ellie smiled. I had a little chat with Ambassador Vrex during lunch break. Turns out he's been acting out because nobody acknowledges his species' recent conservation efforts. Classic attention-seeking behavior. Sometimes the toughest kids just need to be seen. The negotiations had been progressing smoothly for 3 days when everything fell apart. Ellie entered the classroom to find the Graxian delegation floating gas clouds contained in pressurized suits pulsing in angry crimson. The Zaxxons have violated the preliminary agreement. Their synthesized voice boomed. They sent survey ships to the southern continent overnight. The Zaxxon representative's crystalline surface darkened. We did nothing of the sort. This is Graxian propaganda. Within moments, the room erupted into chaos. The Graxians expanded ominously, their containment suits stretching to accommodate their agitated state. Warning alarms blared as the station's sensors detected energy buildups. The Graxians are preparing to release toxic compounds, shouted Admiral Kraz over the emergency channel. Evacuate the chamber immediately. Tab moved to Ellie's side, battle protocols visibly activating as weapons emerged from hidden compartments. Educator Thornberry, please proceed to the emergency shelter. Instead, Ellie walked calmly to the center of the room and sat down cross-legged on the floor. What are you doing? Hissed Vextor from the doorway. The Graxians can convert their entire bodily mass into corrosive gas when threatened. Ellie began humming softly, a simple melody that gradually increased in volume. One by one, the delegates stopped shouting to stare at the human sitting vulnerable in their midst. When she had everyone's attention, Ellie spoke. In my classroom back on Earth, we have a saying, big feelings are okay, big actions are not. The Graxian delegate pulsed angrily. The Zaxxons have betrayed. I understand you're feeling betrayed, Ellie interrupted. That's a big feeling. But threatening everyone's safety is a big action that doesn't solve the problem. She turned to the Zaxxon. Ambassador Crystalline, did your people send ships to the southern continent? We sent one unmanned probe to verify mineral deposits, as permitted under Section 12 of the preliminary agreement, the Zaxxon replied defensively. Ellie nodded. And did you notify the other delegations as required under Section 14? A guilty shimmer passed across the Zaxxon's surface. We intended to submit the notification this morning. I see. Ellie stood up and retrieved her marble jar. This looks like a trust violation. When we break trust in my classroom, we have to give back a privilege and work to rebuild that trust. To everyone's surprise, she removed 2 marbles from the Zaxxon's allocation. These go into the community jar until trust is restored. The Zaxxon dimmed in what appeared to be embarrassment. We accept this consequence. The Graxian delegation, still pulsing but now a less alarming orange, vibrated suspiciously. And what of our concerns? Valid concerns deserve proper channels, Ellie replied. Which is why we're adding a daily procedure check to our morning meeting. Tab will oversee compliance reporting. Slowly, the Graxians returned to their normal pale blue state. The emergency alarms silenced as their energy readings stabilized. Crisis averted, Admiral Kraz announced, his tentacles relaxing their grip on his weapons. Though I admit I don't understand what just happened. Redirection and validation, Ellie explained as the delegates returned to their seats. Works with kindergartners throwing tantrums and apparently with gas-based life forms threatening chemical warfare. Later that day, as Ellie was preparing materials for the next session, Admiral Kraz approached her workstation. "The Galactic Security Council has reviewed the incident," he said, his tone notably less dismissive than in previous interactions. They were impressed. "High praise," Ellie remarked dryly. "Our traditional diplomatic corps has failed to achieve in decades what you've accomplished in days," Kraz admitted. "The delegates are actually cooperating. The Vrex and Krill representatives were seen sharing a meal in the commissary." Ellie smiled. Sometimes all people need, regardless of species, is to feel heard and to have clear boundaries. That, and the occasional timeout.
Kraz's tentacles twisted in what Ellie had come to recognize as amusement. "Perhaps there is something to your methods after all, Educator Thornberry. Call me Ellie."
"Very well, Ellie." Kraz hesitated. "The Council has approved your request for the field expedition to the disputed planet. Though I must register my professional concern about bringing 17 historically hostile species to the very location they've been fighting over." Ellie patted one of his tentacles reassuringly. "Trust the process, Admiral. Sometimes you need to face the problem directly to solve it. Like making children who fight over a toy play together with that specific toy." "Exactly. Now, could you help me requisition 17 different sizes of safety vests? And possibly a planetary exploration vehicle large enough for the Vrex delegation? They get claustrophobic in standard shuttles. Remember your buddy system." Ellie called out as the delegates disembarked from the massive transport vessel onto the surface of the disputed planet. The landscape was breathtaking. Crystal formations jutted from teal-colored soil, while 3 moons hung visibly in the daytime sky. Vegetation in impossible shades of purple and silver swayed in the gentle breeze. "This is your first cooperative research mission," Ellie reminded them. "Each team has a specific objective. Gather data, respect the indigenous ecosystem, and remember, helping your partner species earns bonus points for your delegation." Tab hovered nearby, monitoring 17 different communication channels simultaneously. All teams reporting ready status, Educator Thornberry. Ellie had strategically paired the delegations, putting historical enemies together on research teams with complementary skills. The Vrex and Krill, for instance, were tasked with surveying the northern polar region, where their different sensory capabilities would be advantageous. "I still think this is tremendously risky," murmured Vex Tor, triple-checking his emergency evacuation protocols. "The last time representatives from all these species were on this planet simultaneously, 3 continents were rendered uninhabitable." "Sometimes you need to face your fears," Ellie replied. "Besides, I implemented a brilliant kindergarten strategy this morning." "Which is?" "I told them they could have dessert with dinner if everyone behaves during our field trip. These are advanced civilizations with interstellar travel capabilities," Vextor protested. "And yet, you'd be amazed what beings of any species will do for a really good dessert." Throughout the day, Ellie moved between the research teams, mediating minor disputes and encouraging collaboration. She watched as ancient enemies grudgingly acknowledged each other's expertise, and adversarial diplomats found common ground in scientific discovery. By mid-afternoon, something remarkable was happening. The delegates were voluntarily sharing findings across team boundaries. The Zaxxons, with their ability to analyze light frequencies, were helping the light-sensitive nocturnals identify rare mineral deposits. The Graxians discovered they could safely filter soil samples through their gaseous bodies, accelerating the Trill Hive's agricultural research. "Your assessment was correct," Admiral Kraz said as he monitored the activities from a hover platform. "Placing them in a cooperative learning environment has changed the dynamic completely." "Play-based learning," Ellie nodded. "Works every time." As the planet's sun began to set, the teams gathered at the base camp to share their findings. The mood was almost festive until Tab's alarm system activated. "Security breach detected," the repurposed battle droid announced, weapons systems coming online. unauthorized vessel approaching from the planet's dark side. The delegates froze. Admiral Kraz's communication unit crackled to life. Unidentified ship refusing to respond to hails. Defensive measures recommended. Ellie watched as the cooperative atmosphere evaporated instantly. The Vrex delegation's scales darkened to combat mode. The Zaxxons formed a defensive crystal configuration. Accusations started flying. I knew the Graxians couldn't be trusted. This is clearly a Vrex military vessel. The humans have betrayed us all. Quiet. Ellie's voice cut through the chaos with the practiced authority of someone who had stopped countless playground meltdowns. Everyone in the circle now. To Admiral Kraz's continued amazement, the delegates complied, forming a rough circle around Ellie. Before we jump to accusations, let's use our critical thinking skills, she said firmly. What do we know for certain? The nocturnal representative raised a tentative appendage. The vessel approached from the dark side of the planet, suggesting stealth was a priority. Good observation. What else? The timing coincides with our discovery of the rare mineral deposits in the western mountain range, added the Trill Hive representative. Ellie nodded. So this might be about resources, not politics. Admiral Kraz, can your scanners identify the ship type? It's a mining vessel, Kraz confirmed after a moment. Registered to the Proxima Corporation. A collective gasp swept through the circle. The interstellar mining conglomerate, Vextor explained to Ellie. They've been lobbying against any resolution to this conflict for decades. Because as long as 17 species are fighting over this planet, nobody has clear jurisdiction to stop illegal mining operations, Ellie concluded.
Ambassador Vrex's scales flushed an intense green. They've been manipulating us against each other.
Divide and conquer, Ellie said. Oldest playground tactic in the book. The delegates exchanged looks of growing comprehension and indignation. So what do we do now? Asked the Zaxxon representative. Ellie smiled. What any good kindergarten class does when faced with an outside threat. We stick together. Within minutes, a plan was formulated. The Zaxxons used their light refraction abilities to create the illusion of the delegations fighting among themselves, while the Graxians deployed harmless but visually impressive gas clouds to simulate weapons fire. Meanwhile, the cloaked nocturnal ships surrounded the mining vessel. By the time the Proxima Corporation realized they'd been deceived, it was too late. The mining vessel was captured, its illegal operations documented, and its crew detained. As they returned to their base camp under the light of 3 moons, something unprecedented happened. The Vrex ambassador approached the Krill delegation and extended a ceremonial blade handle first. A symbol of truce, Vextor whispered to Ellie. The Vrex haven't offered the blade of reconciliation to anyone in 7 centuries. Ellie nodded appreciatively. Sometimes the best way to make friends is having a common enemy. 1 month after the field expedition, Ellie stood in what had once been her makeshift classroom, now officially designated as the Terrestrial Negotiation Methodology Center. The space had been expanded, with permanent stations for each delegation and a dedicated area for what the Galactic Council insisted on calling circular diplomatic engagement, but what Ellie still thought of as circle time. The treaty is ready for final signatures, announced Vextor, now permanently assigned as liaison to the Terrestrial Diplomatic Corps. All 17 delegations have approved the resource-sharing provisions. And the Joint Protection Force? Ellie asked. Staffed by representatives from each species, as you suggested. The Proxima Corporation has been banned from the sector and fined 30 billion galactic credits, most of which will fund the Planetary Conservation Initiative. Ellie smiled as she packed her personal items into a small bag. Her 6-month contract had been extended twice, but it was finally time to return to Earth. You've revolutionized interspecies relations, Admiral Kraz said, floating into the room. His formerly stark military uniform now sported a small gold star pin, a fashion trend that had swept through the diplomatic corps. The Council is establishing similar programs in 12 conflict zones across the galaxy. Just implementing what teachers have known for centuries, Ellie replied modestly. It's clear expectations, consistent consequences, and creating a community where everyone feels valued. The human approach is unexpectedly effective, Kraz admitted. Though I'm concerned about your replacement. They lack your specific experience. Ellie laughed. Ms. Rodriguez taught middle school for 15 years in the Bronx. Trust me, she'll be fine. As Ellie made her final rounds, saying goodbye to each delegation, Tab followed dutifully behind, recording the proceedings for the official archives. You know, Tab, Ellie said as they walked. When I first arrived, Admiral Kraz had 17 separate contingency plans for evacuating the station in case the negotiations failed. Current emergency protocols have been reduced by 82%, Tab confirmed, though the Admiral has implemented one new emergency scenario, which is Protocol K-12, station-wide response in the event of a PTA meeting. Ellie burst into laughter. Smart man, or octopus.
Her final stop was the observation deck, where she found all 17 delegates gathered in an unexpected farewell party. A banner made from materials representing each homeworld stretched across the viewport, reading "Thank you, Educator Thornberry" in multiple languages.
Ambassador Vreck stepped forward, his scales a formal purple. The combined delegations wish to present you with this token of our appreciation. He handed her a small crystal sphere containing what appeared to be miniature versions of all their home planets orbiting peacefully around a tiny star. It's beautiful, Ellie said sincerely. The Galactic Educational Coalition has also been formed in your honor, added the Zaxxon representative. We have much to learn from human teaching methodologies. And we've officially renamed the disputed planet, chimed in the Krill delegate. It is now registered as Thornberry's World in the Galactic Catalog. Ellie blinked back tears. I don't know what to say. Say you'll return for the first interspecies kindergarten graduation, suggested Vex Tor. Many of the delegates have enrolled their offspring. I wouldn't miss it for the universe, Ellie promised. As her transport prepared for departure, Ellie gazed out at the stars. When she'd arrived 6 months ago, she'd been skeptical that her classroom management skills could possibly apply to interstellar diplomacy. Now she knew better. Whether you were dealing with 5-year-old humans or 1,000-year-old gas clouds, the principles remained the same. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone needs clear boundaries. And sometimes, all it takes to prevent galactic war is a well-timed timeout and the promise of a gold star. As the shuttle pulled away from Nebula Station, Admiral Kraz's voice came over the communication system. The Galactic Council has officially amended the first contact protocols, Educator Thornberry. How so? Ellie asked. In the event of potentially hostile alien encounters, our first response is no longer to deploy battleships. What is it now? We send in the kindergarten teachers,